Gucci, Gucci 2 times, say it 2 times. Gucci, Gucci 2 times, say it 2 times. Gucci, Gucci 2 times.
Months back, I spoke at Cal State University, Los Angeles. A few days before I was scheduled to speak, the president of the university decided that it was imperative that my lecture be canceled. And he issued a letter explaining why he had canceled this lecture. He wrote, quote, "After careful consideration, I've decided that it will be best for our campus community if we reschedule Ben Shapiro's appearance for a later date so we can arrange for him to appear as part of a group of speakers with differing viewpoints on diversity. Such an event will better represent our university's dedication to the free exchange of ideas and the value of considering multiple viewpoints." So it's so important to consider multiple viewpoints and have a free exchange of ideas that the one idea they don't like has to be shut down in the name of diversity. And that's what diversity means. Diversity generally means on college campuses, shut up lest you make some people uncomfortable, because diversity can't thrive where people disagree. Everybody has to agree in order for diversity to really bloom. This idea goes back a long ways, back to a professor named Herbert Marcuse. He said back in the 1960s that he was in favor of what he called liberating tolerance as opposed to the repressive tolerance of free speech. He said free speech was just demonstration that there was this patriarchal, heteronormative order that crammed down freedom on people, and so freedom had to be overthrown. Free speech was repressive tolerance. What he wanted was liberating tolerance, and the only way to have liberating tolerance was to shut down everybody who disagreed with him. So true tolerance meant that you couldn't tolerate anybody who disagreed with him, which makes perfect sense if you're highly educated, but makes no sense if you have a basic shred of common sense. Marcuse's ideological grandchildren now run the campuses. So when I got to Cal State LA, a near riot broke out. The reason that I have security, I didn't have to have security a year ago when I did speeches, but because of all the security problems that we've had at my speeches in the past, I now have to have my friends in security. Students barricaded the doors, people pulled fire alarms, all in the name of diversity, all to show that this is what diversity was really about. And wasn't it just wonderful? Which begs the question, if the left doesn't care about diversity of thought, what exactly do they mean by diversity? Now, we all know what the left means by diversity. What the left means by, well, I haven't said anything bigoted yet, so you might want to wait. What the left means is racial diversity. But racial diversity, as we all know from being decent human beings, really shouldn't mean much. A racially diverse criminal gang isn't a better enterprise than an all-black church choir. Values matter significantly more than melanin level. And if you believe the opposite, this makes you a racist. Racial diversity doesn't mean anything. Decency means something. Diversity is not a bad thing, but it isn't a good thing unless the people who are racially diverse are also decent. Diversity isn't a bad thing unless the people who are racially diverse are indecent. This is not a difficult thing. Diversity isn't our strength. Decency is our strength. Robert Putnam is the author of a book called Bowling Alone, big New York Times bestseller. He's on the left, and he used to believe in this mantra, diversity is our strength. And then he started doing experiments regarding communities, and what he saw was that in diverse communities, racial, ethnic diversity, which these days comes along with diversity of fundamental values, thanks to the multicultural left, it didn't lead to better, more cohesive, and more tolerant communities. And again, this is Robert Putnam, who's on the left. He wrote this. He said, "The only two things that go up as diversity of your census tract goes up are protest marches and television watching." He concluded that the only way that you could actually create social capital, and social capital, of course, is the thing that allows you to leave your door unlocked at night and allows your neighbor to babysit your kids, the only thing that leads to that is decency, shared values. The only thing that allows people of diverse backgrounds not to be polarized by tribal identity, to live together and to overcome their tribalism, is decent behavior. But unfortunately, the left only cares about racial diversity. That's all they care about. It's a racist philosophy, and they make themselves feel good by saying they stand for racial diversity rather than values. No objective standard of behavior, just the level of the melanin in your skin is what counts, or the country that you came from, or the ethnicity of your parents. Which means that, for example, at this university, the Yale Dramatic Association Board holds new auditions for a play after people whine that a white woman was cast in a role normally played by a black man. It doesn't matter that the white woman was auditioning next to 9 people of color who auditioned. She won the part. The black people didn't. That meant that they had to redo the auditions. And the board said, quote, "We recognize the pain that this situation has caused, and that this new decision may come too late for some and may hurt others." It sounds like there's a murder plot or something. Still, We hope that reopening auditions will give the Yale community another opportunity to bring new and varied voices to the stage, except, of course, for Sarah Chapin, the white woman who is thrown out of the role. She can go screw herself because she's a white woman who happened to beat out some people of color for this role. So she has to lose, they have to win, not because of merit, not because of standards, but because of the color of...
tension between population-level research and individual experience. He could have stood up for the free flow of information. Instead, he joined the mob. This episode suggests he should seek a non-leadership position. Ben Shapiro is the Daily Wire's editor-in-chief, and you had that interview yesterday. I think you were the first person to get to talk to the memo writer. What was your takeaway from it?
So I think there were a couple of other people, to be fair, who talked to him before I did.
I'm trying to give you a elevation.
Oh no, I totally appreciate it, but I don't want to take credit away from anybody else who did it. So, but my takeaway was this was not somebody who was seeking to destroy the idea of women in tech. In fact, there's a whole page and a half of the memo that is specifically dedicated to the idea of how do we get more women into tech, because one of the reasons you don't see as many women in tech is because fewer women are interested in getting into tech because of all of the demands of work-life balance, because of the way that the job itself is done. And so he looks at that, he looks at the social science data, and he says, okay, maybe we can make the jobs more attractive to women by doing X, Y, and Z. And for this, he's run out of a rail from Google, which just demonstrates the sort of orthodoxy at Google. And if you're a heretic in any way, you have to be ousted by the upper echelon.
I was surprised that he got fired. I mean, isn't this something when you're 28 years old, you might get, a warning, maybe a memo put in your file?
It got so big, I think it went around the internet so much that Google was forced into a position where all of the quote-unquote diversity advocates inside Google who can't stand an opposing opinion felt they had to make a stink about it in response, and thus he had to go. They were afraid that somebody might launch a lawsuit. I mean, there were stories about women who were staying home from work because they were so offended, which, of course, sort of proves James Damore's point about the differences between the sexes. And if you want to prove that women are completely the same as men in the workplace, I don't know how many men would have taken off a day for sexism reasons if some woman had written a memo about how bad men are.
You talk a lot. You visit a lot of campuses where there's obviously an attempt to restrict free speech. But it was interesting to me to watch this actually happen at Google, that they had to cancel the town hall meeting because people were afraid for their safety.
Yeah, I mean, I'd heard that. I'd like to see the evidence as to who was actually being threatened. Obviously, threats of violence are out of bounds on all grounds.
Right.
And so if there were people of the right who were threatening people about diversity meetings, then that's obviously out of bounds. But let's see the evidence of it.
All right, we got another story because White House aide Omarosa Manigault, she's finding herself at the center of this controversy. She was invited to be a panelist during the National Association of Black Journalists Conference. But shortly after she was added, 2 journalists dropped out, though they now claim she wasn't the reason. And I kind of feel bad for her. I mean, they showed tonight a picture that when she's there, some of the journalists got up and turned their backs to her. I can understand if they don't agree with her policies or maybe even that of President Trump, but surely they should be proud of her for getting this position in the White House and at least give her the courtesy of a listen.
Well, this is the biggest problem, is this notion that you go to lectures and then you turn your back on the person who's there. Like, what exactly are they protesting from Omarosa? I'm again looking for the policy that they're very angry about. My understanding is that Omarosa, when she was at this event, she even actually criticized the president on such things as his talk about treatment by police of criminals. So she wasn't exactly, towing the party line on everything Trump related, but she was treated as an outcast because the National Association of Black Journalists is apparently the National Association of Leftist Black Journalists.
All right, before you go, 3 months ago, she was in prison for one of the worst security breaches in our history, but now Chelsea Manning, you talk about her a lot, she's getting this full celebrity treatment, complete with this lengthy profile in Vogue and a photo shoot by famed celebrity photographer Annie Leibovitz. In the time we have remaining, I wonder what you think about this, because in some ways, it just feels like a push from the left to glamorize somebody who, one, broke the law, and also, I don't know, really deserves this kind of celebrity treatment, but I'll let you tell us what you think.
Well, it's a slap in the face, I think, to all Americans and people in the military who were victimized by Chelsea Manning's behavior when Chelsea Manning was leaking military secrets to WikiLeaks. Well, what's amazing about all of this, of course, is the left is trying to use identity politics as a cover for anti-patriotism. So Chelsea Manning is a traitor, and now they are trying to say, well, if you don't like Chelsea Manning being a traitor, it's really because you're anti-trans. Chelsea Manning, by the way, has already tweeted out that he is not watching this particular segment, to which I tweeted back that I hope not, because I wouldn't want Chelsea Manning to let Al-Qaeda know that it's happening.
Well, it's true. And I also think that, obviously Annie Leibovitz, that's a, high praise. And there have been other transgenders that get this kind of treatment. And, okay, that's fine. But in this particular case, when it came to what he did, when it came to stealing those documents and giving them to WikiLeaks, to me, that just crossed a line.
I totally agree. I mean, again, there's a lot of controversy over people like Caitlyn Jenner and whether they should be getting the star treatment over a controversial question about mental illness or not mental illness. But to combine that, to use that as sort of a shield for bad behavior, for traitorous behavior.
Thanks, Ben.
And then
A movie's no sense, the all-female Lord of the Flies. Why do I think this is important? Because I think that it is important to understand that the left's perverse and weird notion of what exactly men and women are, boys and girls, is exactly that. It's weird and perverse. So if you actually read Lord of the Flies, it is a book about boys becoming men. It is a book about what happens to boys in the absence of civilization. It is a book about the violent nature of particularly men. And it's funny that they'd want to do an all-female version of this, because the fact is that one of the things that feminists are constantly ripping about men is that men are violent, right? This is the routine we got from Hillary Clinton. That if Hillary had been elected president, there would never be another violent thing that happened ever, because all wars in history have been men. You get that routine from the feminists all the time, but now they want to do Lord of the Flies, which is based on physical violence being done between groups. I guess that now that they've done the all-female Ghostbusters, and that was such a smashing success, and such a horrible movie. And now Scott McGeehee and David Siegel have made a deal at Warner's to direct a new version of Lord of the Flies. They plan to be faithful to the novel with one major twist. The young students stranded on a remote island who descend into a savage social order will be girls. And so here's what they say. This is quoting Paul Bois over at Daily Wire. David Siegel says, "We want to do a very faithful but contemporized adaptation of the book." First of all, why would you have to do a contemporized adaptation of the book? It's literally a bunch of boys stuck on an island. Does that need a lot of updating? It's not like you're updating Shakespeare or something and you have to update the language. It's not like there are a bunch of cultural totems in Lord of the Flies. Literally, there is a conch shell. That is the entirety of the props in Lord of the Flies. Okay, there's like a pig head. That's pretty much it. I guess they can have Lena, there are the glasses, that's true. Thank you, Taylor. I guess that you could theoretically cast Lena Dunham as Piggy, which might make some sense. But David Siegel says, "We want to do a faithful but contemporized adaptation of the book." It says, "It is a timeless story that is especially relevant today with the interpersonal conflicts and bullying and the idea of children forming a society and replicating the behavior they saw in grown-ups before they were marooned." That really is not what the book is about. The book is really not about that. If you've read the book is really not about them imitating the adults. The point of the book is they get to the island and they realize there are no adults here. We can do whatever we want. That is the first 3 chapters of the book. Have they even read it? The entire point of the book is that man without civilization descends into anarchy and violence. That's the entire point of the stupid book. And the book isn't stupid, but this is ridiculous. McGeehee says, "The subject matter is aggressively suspenseful, and taking the opportunity to tell it in a way that hasn't been told before, with girls rather than boys, is that it shifts things in a way that might help people see the story anew. It breaks away from some of the conventions, the way we think of boys and aggression." We don't think of boys and aggression. Boys are aggressive. Okay, I have a girl and I have a boy. The girl is 3.5 years old. She is calm. She is delightful. She is not aggressive. I have a boy who is 1.5 years old. I love him very much. He is awesome. He also will beat the living crap out of you if you cross him. Okay, he's a boy. That's what they do. That's just what they are. People still talk about the movie and the book from the standpoint of pure storytelling. It is a great adventure story, real entertainment, but it has a lot of meaning embedded in it as well. We've gotten to think about this a while as the rights were worked out, and we're super eager to put pen to paper. So they say this is just ridiculous. Okay, a few things about this that are particularly ridiculous. First of all, boys and girls are not the same. This is one of my pet peeves in film. It's one of the reasons I think I said on the show, Atomic Blonde failed. I think the reason Atomic Blonde failed is because the character could have been a man and there would have been no difference to the story at all. Like legitimately down to the seduction of a woman. Like there's literally no difference in Atomic Blonde between her being a man and her being a woman. Any movie where there's no difference in the main characters, like an action movie that actually implicates the differences between men and women, any movie that focuses on men and women being exactly substitutable, being exactly the same, it just does not work that way. It doesn't work for the viewer because the viewer knows there are differences between boys and girls. Here's the fact, okay? The movie would not work in any real sense because girls do not act the same as boys. Quick question for you. How many physical fights, not like yelling at each other and then crying on the phone fights, like physical fights have most girls been in? Most girls have been in very, very few physical fights, if any. The vast majority of girls that I know haven't been in any physical fights. How many fights have the vast majority of boys been in? The answer is probably greater than 5. Boys, particularly young boys, fight with each other all the time. They have physical fights with each other. Their violence their arguments escalate to physical aggression in short order in a way that girls don't. Girls don't sit around smacking each other in the face, okay? That's not what girls do. When I was in law school, there was a group of guys who would legitimately go to bars, get drunk, and sock each other in the balls. This was like their way of having fun. Okay, the idea that girls, like, I've never heard of girls doing this. Okay, guys are much more aggressive than girls, which is why guys join the army and murder each other. This is why the vast majority of murderers in every culture in history have been men. The idea that women and men are exactly the same is stupid. They don't even group the same way. You know what would happen if a bunch of girls got stuck on an island together? First of all, they would actually share and talk about their feelings because they like that stuff. Guys don't like that stuff. Half of the beginning of Lord of the Flies is the guys don't want to share feelings, and Piggy wants to share feelings, so they murder him. Okay, so that's legitimately what happens in the book. If a girl tries to share her feelings in an island with a bunch of other girls who are just shipwrecked, they will sit around and bond over this. That's what they will do. Okay, beyond that, girls don't tend to break into giant groups. They don't break into giant tribes. There have been studies that have shown this. There was one from the National Institute of Health that came out just recently. And what they found is that girls actually like to get together in sort of best friend forever circumstances. They have a very close-knit circle of friends, right? They have girls will have their best friend, and that's it, right? Guys will get together in packs, and they roam around in packs. That's what they do. Because guys are basically just chimpanzees, like male chimpanzees. They walk around in packs. That's what happens in Lord of the Flies. They break down into packs, and then they fight each other. Because men are looking for physical safety from other men, and so they band together to provide that physical safety for one another. Girls, in the absence of guys, are not deeply worried about other girls physically attacking them, and so they only need somebody with whom they can spiritually and mentally bond. That's what they are looking for.